Welcome to part 3 of the Christian Parenting course. In this session, we're going to be looking around the idea of your passion becomes their passion with our children. So there was a piece of research done quite recently where they looked at what makes a Christian household bring up Christian children the best, and things that contribute to that. And one of the things that they found was that the thing that makes children more likely to be of faith is when their parents talk about faith in their home, believe it or not. So what happens is, on a Sunday, the majority of the time, families will come to church and they'll get their church hit. Maybe they feel good about their lives when you come to church and you think, I've done a good job today, I've gone to church, that makes me a good person. And then what happens is you leave, you go home, and then that's it, no more church until next Sunday. But studies show that when you carry on talking about church when you get home, your children are more likely to start following your passion. When you talk about church around the house and when you talk about Jesus around the house, children are more likely to want to be involved and to connect with Jesus. So that's pretty good, isn't it? That's good news. So literally, all we have to do is be passionate about God in the home as what we are when we're at church. I know. How do we do that? Well, why not try having a conversation when you get home about the sermon, or even about how you've experienced God in the service. Some weeks I can imagine it'll be a little bit quieter, because it's not like every single week we come, it's like, all of heaven breaks loose and we're all totally undone and smashed by Jesus, although it'd be lovely if we were, and I certainly come anticipating that to be the case. But the way in which we go home and talk about church afterwards can really have a big impact on our children, and the way in which we wake up in the morning. Do you talk about God when you wake up in the morning? Do you read your Bible in the morning? What do you do with your time? What do you talk about at home? I know a lot of people maybe struggle to speak to their children about anything, but I've come to find that speaking to children about their day, speaking to them about, what's gone on in their day, how did they respond, did they pray about things, can you pray about stuff like, I remember when we first became Christians and Liam was having a really tough time at school because someone found out at school that he went to church, and so he obviously was talking about church whilst he was at school, and some of the kids started being a bit horrid to him. And there were two things that I did. The first thing that I did was I bought him a pair of Nike trainers, and I said, there you go, son, wear those to school, you'll be the coolest kid around. And then the second thing that we did was in my life group that we had at our church back in Northampton, which is a life group, is basically like a small group that meets during the week to pray for each other and pray for things like our children and stuff when they're struggling at school. And we prayed for Liam to not be bullied anymore about his faith, but instead to be a good witness to his friends. And within a couple of weeks, Liam came home ever so excited because a couple of other boys in his class had been to church, and now they were going to school wearing these cross necklaces, and they were ever so excited about church because they'd seen someone being baptised, and now they wanted to be baptised. And so Liam, one minute is being bullied, the next minute he's got some friends who are now talking about Jesus, and they're going around the little Jesus crew, as well as having his new Nike trainers, which he was ever so proud of. And so the fact is that we can encourage our children to think about prayer and to think about God by asking them, about their day at school and about the things that are going on in their lives, and helping them to see that they can pray about those things and that we can pray with them and for them about normal day-to-day things. Because God should be in our everyday. God should be in all the things that we do from day to day. And so that's one way in which you can encourage some conversation about God. Now, obviously, you don't just want to be talking to your children about God. It's important that you talk to one another. And I've always found, certainly in our household, a good old debate about a theological thing or so. So something like we would have a debate in our house about ethics, Christian ethics, how do we feel about, I don't know, euthanasia, for example, and we'll talk about how our conversation, like how our relationship with God colours our idea of euthanasia, and we will talk about those things, and we will talk about the importance of life and the value that God puts on life, and we would have those conversations in our house. And obviously, because me and Laura are quite vocal, you can imagine the debate would ramble on a little bit, and the children would sometimes join in with that. In fact, today, sometimes the children come up with their own arguments and start arguments themselves. I mean debates, not arguments. Obviously, they're arguments, aren't they? But we have debates. We do debates quite a lot in our house. We have debates about Christianity and politics, and we have debates about how God might feel about certain things like sexuality and things like that, and how we should behave towards people that aren't like us. We have debates about justice, and we have debates about all sorts of other things in our house, and it's always surrounding how our Christian faith colours our idea of those things. And so, that being the case, because faith is always in our conversation, it means that our passion has now passed on to our children, and our passions are now their passions, and so we are able to have some good conversations, and those conversations spill out into the relationships around them. Sometimes into their romantic relationships and into their relationships with friends at school and stuff. And so Liam was the first person to lead someone to faith in Jesus when we came to Lincoln. He led one of his young friends from school to faith in Jesus, and I was like, I can't believe it wasn't me, but I'm so glad that it was Liam, because it means that his faith is real, and it means that he has a good standing point, a good starting point to be able to argue for his faith. If he's able to stand up and argue for his faith in front of his friends at school, then he can do it anywhere. And that's where we want our children to get to. We want them to get to a place where they can stand up for their faith, where they can argue for their faith. It's called apologetics, and arguing for your faith, reasoning for your faith. And so they will never get to that point unless you have some debates and some conversations about God in our lives around the dinner table, around the house. Another thing that I've always done in our house is I've always had either the news or God TV or something like that on in the background. And so I remember the first sermon that Liam ever paid any attention to is a guy called Gavin Calver, who was the head of youth work for the Evangelical Alliance, which is like an overseeing sort of organisation for Christians in the UK. And Gavin Calver came onto the stage at a conference on God TV whilst me and Liam were sat there watching, and started preaching about Jesus. And Liam was just lapping it up. He sat there and listened to the whole thing, and it's a decent talk as well. It's like 40 minutes, and somehow Gavin Calver managed to keep Liam intrigued the entire time. And I was like, wow, amazing that someone could do that with like a kid who's like 8 or 9 years old. Absolutely amazing. And so watching Christian TV around the house can also encourage your children to be children of faith. Did you know you can also buy some Christian cartoons? A really well known one is called VeggieTales, which is like a Christian kids comedy sort of cartoony thing with vegetables who go on these adventures and talk about faith a lot. All these different things, all the things that you would do for any other hobby or thing that you're interested in, you should do with your faith as well. You can even buy some of these DVDs online, or you can watch them on Netflix, believe it or not, if you're interested in some VeggieTales. Either way, you need to find ways to bring God into the home, because whatever you're passionate about, you'll be passionate about at home, and then your children will also become passionate about those things, and in particular they'll be passionate about Jesus, and they will encounter Jesus, and they want to wrestle with faith and the world in their minds and with their friends. And that is how we bring children up in the Christian faith. Hopefully this has helped you again, and hopefully you got some ideas of how you can help your children to be more involved in the faith and to be more engaged in it. But for now, let me say goodbye, and I'll see you in our next session. Bye bye.